My name is Kirsten Kolpitke, and I'm the Legislative and Regulatory Affairs Manager with Pioneer Community Energy. But I also have with me today Bruce Springsteen, who's the Senior Engineer with Placer County Air Pollution Control District, and Matt Diaz, who's not only a registered professional forester, but he's also president of the California Forestry Association. For today's webinar, we're going to be discussing what is exactly biomass, dispelling some of the myths surrounding biomass, and replacing those myths with facts. We'll be talking about the benefits of biomass and new facilities that we can expect to be coming online because of the Biomat program. We'll discuss the viability of a proposed biomass plant, and finally answer any questions that you guys might have today. What is biomass? Biomass is the burning of organic residue waste to produce electricity, traditionally through the direct combustion of organic residues to create heat, which in turn creates high pressure steam that turns a turbine to drive a generator that produces electricity. This organic residue can create adverse environmental impacts when disposed of using traditional means of pile burning, landfill, or left in field. Biomass fuel comes from three distinct sources, the first of which is agricultural byproducts, including orchard removal and pruning, rice hulls, and fruit pits. Secondly, forest residues and byproducts like sawmill residue, commercial harvesting operations, and small trees and undergrowth cleared from forests for fire suppression, watershed cleanup, and growth enhancement. And lastly, urban wood, like construction wood scraps, discarded pallets, clean wood waste from factories, and residues from tree trimmers. There are currently 23 solid fuel biomass electric generating facilities in California, distributed across 17 counties in the state. Biomass generators produce reliable baseload renewable power that can be scheduled to supply power when it is needed most. Once more than 15% of California's renewable electricity supply, solid fuel biomass generators now provide only about 6% or 532 megawatts of California's renewables. By way of comparison, biomass accounts for almost 60% of renewable energy in the European Union. Now let's get to the biomass myths.
There's a common misperception that biomass is dirty, and that usually refers to it adding to or causing air pollution. And actually, biomass reduces and improves regional air quality. It certainly avoids or displaces fossil fuels for producing equivalent energy or electricity. But the primary benefit is it avoiding the alternative or common disposal procedure. And for, as Kirsten described, for forest wastes, that would be open pile burning. It's not common, or for ecological and fire hazard reasons, it's not possible to just leave the excess biomass in the forest. For ag wastes, some limited amount of tilling and chipping back into the field can be accomplished, but not fully. So ag and forest waste relies on open pile burning. My agency permits that. It's a tool, but we don't like it. As I'm going to show you, it's a huge source of air pollution. And the alternatives, and for urban wood waste, it will be landfilling or just decaying or decomposing in where it's left. But for open pile burning, again, there's huge benefits and the options are limited. Bioenergy is about the highest value option. People talk about pellets, compost, particle board, and these options, although exciting, haven't turned out to be really practical yet. So next slide, please, Kirsten. So what my agency did is we looked very carefully at a biomass project. So there were some piles up in Forest Hill that were going to be pile burned, but we invested and studied that and chipped them and transported them 60 to 70 miles one way down to an existing bioenergy facility in my air district, SPI lumber mill. And we looked at the air pollution impacts of bioenergy, biomass, versus the open pile burning. And this chart compares fine particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, volatile organic compounds, all very important air pollutants to my agency. Fine particulate is a direct health issue. Nitrogen oxides and VOC form ground level ozone or smog, also very important to California air districts. So what we demonstrated was, in this plot again, the orange bars are the open pile burn, and the right next to it is the biomass project. And what it shows, not surprisingly, is that there's a huge benefit of particulate matter reductions, like 99%, huge benefits to carbon monoxide, VOCs, as you can see, and good nitrogen oxide benefits, not as huge. And this is not, again, surprising, because an open pile burn has an inefficient burn, whereas moving it to a very efficient, well-controlled bioenergy facility, has the lower emissions. One interesting aspect is that the amount of diesel that you need to invest to chip it and truck it turns out to not really.
That looks delicious.
To the air pollution. The diesel engines, the energy value in a chip van is huge compared to the amount of diesel you need to invest to get it, to chip it, process it, and truck it. It's like, for the 60 mile, it was 2 to 3% of the energy. And the diesel engines, today's diesel engines, are very well controlled. Next slide, Kirsten. So we also looked at the greenhouse gas or carbon impacts. And what we found was there are very important benefits. And I would describe this slide as the bioenergy project very efficiently transformed all the carbon in the biomass to CO2, and that's the big blue bar on the right. On the left side is the pile burn. And you'll notice on the right side, the CO2 from the diesel is very, very small. It's not a huge contributor. And then on the left side is the pile burn. And the pile burn doesn't burn out the CO2 as effectively, and you can see the smaller, large blue bar, but the pile burn has methane, organics, black carbon, other constituents that make up about a balance between the open pile burn and the bioenergy project. So you might say, okay, that's kind of neat. It almost kind of verifies carbon neutrality in some sense. However, the immediate benefit is you've avoided grid electricity. That top blue bar is the benefit to the environment. And I've used combined cycle natural gas turbine, so very efficient, low carbon, relatively low carbon intensity on that blue bar of the benefits. If that was coal or others, it would be quite a bit larger bar. Now, if we had a perfectly, as I like to tell people, if we had a perfectly neutral electricity sector grid, maybe we would choose to leave those piles in the forest or in the ag field, except for greenhouse gas impacts. However, for criteria air pollutants and air toxics, as I just described, I would say absolutely not. We do not want to do that. Next slide, Kirsten.
Well, continuing on this issue of biomass being dirty, and Mr. Springsteen did a good job speaking about the open pile burning and the balance, if you will, of biomass energy to open pile burning. I wanted to talk about the mitigating factor of biomass and forest management and the value of biomass and forest management as it relates to wildfire prevention and even in recovery as well. Most notably, in the recent past here, San Francisco Chronicle published an article relying upon a study recently released by the University of California, Los Angeles, citing that the wildfire emissions solely from 2020 negated 18 years of reductions in greenhouse gas emissions across the state of California. That's shocking to me personally. And when you look at this third bullet point here, it speaks to the California wildfires of 2020, essentially putting approximately 112 million metric tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. And along with that, all the particulate matter that comes along with the noxious gases that are being exuded into the atmosphere as well. Now, going to the second bullet point here, biomass is a critical factor for forest management in the state of California. And there is an added benefit of relying upon biomass to achieve what we are trying to achieve in terms of forest resilience in California. Forest management works. It is undoubted. It is, in my opinion, and in most of the folks out there speaking to the issue of forest management these days, forest management works in terms of reducing impacts from wildfire, reducing severity of wildfire, but with biomass as part of the equation, that forest management activity works even better. We don't want to leave the hazard on the landscape. We are looking to modify fuel structure in a forested environment. That means the removal of trees, means the removal of small diameter material, and also removes removal of understory in some cases. And without there being a robust opportunity to essentially transport that material and get it off the landscape, we are doing good work, but we're not doing the best work that we possibly could. Next slide, please.
So the next myth we want to address is that we can't reduce our carbon footprint with biomass. And the fact is that biomass is carbon neutral. When combustion is used to generate energy from biomass, it releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, but at a much reduced rate when compared to the fates of other woody mass, such as open pile burning. What makes biomass carbon neutral is the natural way that trees remove the carbon from the atmosphere during the photosynthesis process. When these materials are grown in a sustainable way, then the new growth will remove what gets released during electricity generation, refinement, or heating needs.
So you want to take it for one.
And there's another concern people have with biomass is that they perceive it as old or outdated technology, and not accurate. Air districts carefully permit and evaluate and inspect all existing biomass plants as well as any future ones, and all the 23 that Kirsten described are actually large enough that they fall under a federal US EPA program, a Title V permit. So there's additional oversight, and all existing 23 facilities were required at the time they were permitted to meet all best available controls at that time and all the district rules. All 23 use add-on controls for fine particulate, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, all the air pollutants I described. And air districts and EPA are continually establishing new rules that the existing facilities have to keep up with and keep up to date on. Of course, any new facilities would have to use best available controls, which would include the type of controls the existing ones are using with even more advanced methods. There's a trend away from the direct combustion steam to make electricity, as Kirsten described, towards a new procedure where you heat the biomass in the absence or with limited oxygen, and you turn the solid biomass into a syngas or a producer gas. Then you clean up that gas, you clean up that fuel gas and burn it in engines or turbines. And it provides an efficiency improvement. Existing steam cycles are on the order of 20%. With this new pyrolysis gasification into IC engines or turbines, you can approach 30% or more. So there's potential for better efficiencies and even lower emissions, air pollution emissions. And then there's even more out there in the future taking that producer gas or syngas and upgrading it into fuels, whether it's biomethane or hydrogen gas, and then using it in fuel cells, which are, the panacea of air pollution, no emissions water vapor, and liquid alcohols. And so there's new advanced that are rapidly being developed for alternatives to using biomass for energy. Next slide.
So we continue the discussion about some other myths here. One of them that we often hear is that biomass procurement or the option to have biomass markets is going to lead to either clear cutting or deforestation or harvesting of mature trees because it represents a new market, and it just simply is not true. Cal Forests, my association, represents 3.5 million acres of timberlands in the state of California. I've been a registered professional forester for over 2 decades. I have never come across or participated in the removal of mature trees to support biomass markets, even if a biomass market was available. This is an additive benefit that we're looking at. Folks that are involved in the growing of timber for the multiple benefits, social, environmental benefits associated with timber harvesting, forest management, are not looking at biomass as an opportunity to monetize the material from mature stands. We are looking to try to offload material and trying to find markets for material that has nowhere to go on a consistent basis. Our forests are clearly overstocked. We are drought-ridden. We're sitting in a drought again today. It was only a couple years ago where we were ending our drought where nearly 160 million trees across the state of California perished from drought. And when we are dealing with such large sums of material between drought mortality, the wildfires that are born out of drought mortality, and the recovery from those wildfires, we need markets to try to achieve higher standards of resilience. That's the goal here. In response to that, the state of California, along with the federal partners, United States Forest Service, have set a goal for the treatment of 1 million acres across federal and non-federal lands in the state of California. This is for the treatment of green forests, if you will, as we're looking at trying to address wildfire resiliency. These 1 million acres, if we get to 1 million acres annually, which we're not there yet, but we are striving to get there, the amount of material, again, is going to double, triple, quadruple on an annual basis. And every single acre that we treat now is going to need maintenance again in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So this is an ongoing problem. Forests are not static. These are systems that are constantly growing, constantly needing maintenance, and biomass plays a critical role in that. Next slide, please. I just wanted to turn your attention to these next couple slides are essentially a couple different photos, and they're a place in California that most of us know well. This is Yosemite Valley, most notably Upper Yosemite Valley. This photo is taken in 1866. I want you to take a very close look at this imagery here. Look at the valley floor of Yosemite right now. Just take, or in this photo, I should say. Look at the stand density. Look at the encroachment, look at the opportunities that exist in terms of open landscapes, defensible landscapes. And so just take a quick look at this, and I'm going to ask Kirsten to transition to the next slide. This is a photo imagery, again, that was taken nearly 100 years later of the same location. Now, granted, this is 1961, and the conditions in this photo, if taken again, are going to show higher levels of encroachment and even denser conditions. But the clear image here is that the historic forests of California were much less dense. They experienced more consistent wildfire, low-intensity wildfire, but the land use patterns of California over the course of the last 100 years have changed dramatically as well. And we are now living in wildlands that have encroachment, communities, infrastructure, so on and so forth. It is not past the forestry community or anybody else that wildfire, low intensity wildfire would be of benefit, but we cannot apply that strategy everywhere based on land use patterns. We have to have alternative opportunities, and the biomass opportunity is the one that could be a surrogate for locations, of which there's a many, where wildfire or prescribed fire may not be the highest or maybe the most available option for forest management in the toolbox at that particular time. Next slide. So California, in terms of, you know, another myth, if you will, is that biomass is harmful for the treatment. In the context of that statement, we're looking at where the material comes from, the forested landscapes in which this material would be generated. And in California, on private lands, timber harvesting is one of the most regulated industries in the state. We have registered professional foresters, targeted, or I should say trained, if you will, and licensed to be participating in the preparation of lengthy permits that need to negotiate. They have to negotiate multiple state agencies in California. Most notably, Cal Fire takes the lead agency authority when you look at permit approval. But that permit approval is done in conjunction with the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Regional Water Quality Control Boards, California Geologic Survey, and even at times federal partners, NOAA, and at other times the local counties participate in this review process as well. The Forest Practice Act itself in California is targeted at trying to have balance, if you will, long-term sustained yield of high-value timber products while maintaining all the other aspects and public trust resources that our forests provide: water, economics, wildlife, air quality, so on and so forth. And so it's not like this is an unbounded system where forest is, you know, the biomass, the generation of biomass material is just going to run rampant across the landscape without significant oversight by both federal and state partners. Next slide, please.
So biomass actually has similar emissions and possibly even less emissions when compared to other renewables. An analysis conducted by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory shows that the life cycle greenhouse gas emissions from biomass are actually comparable to other renewable energy sources, as depicted by the dark blue line on this slide. This chart compares different energy sources and shows their life cycle greenhouse gas emissions in terms of carbon dioxide equivalent per kilowatt hour. The median value is the dark blue line, and the light blue area shows the harmonized results, which puts biomass in line with other renewable energy sources. When biomass is combined with carbon capture and sequestration, the results show significant negative emissions, and this is the orange triangle on the bar. Another myth about biomass being less reliable, worse for the environment, and more expensive when compared to other renewables. SB 100 established a landmark policy requiring renewable energy and zero carbon resources to supply 100% of electric retail sales by 2045. It is not a matter of which renewable is best, because each has its own set of benefits and challenges. Instead, it is about having all the options on the table with a balanced portfolio and multiple strengths to overcome any one given challenge. Additional benefits of biomass. Making biomass an affordable option is consistent with CalCCA's mission to create a legislative and regulatory environment that supports the development and long-term sustainability of locally run community choice aggregation providers in California. Biomass is an industry that needs to be preserved and enhanced for the state to meet its renewable energy and greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets. Biomass can also be a big part of compliance with landfill disposal reduction goals for certain cities and counties. And solid fuel biomass generation power provides benefits to the electricity grid that result from the fact that it is a reliable, schedulable baseload generation option. An additional benefit of biomass is that it fulfills specific clean firm resource requirements for midterm reliability. CPUC R25003 aims to ensure that there are sufficient resources available to ensure reliability and meet the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. And CPUC Decision 2106035 requires the procurement of 11,500 megawatts of net new qualifying capacity to come online between 2023 and 2026. At least 1,000 megawatts of these resources must be obtained from clean, firm resources, and the decision specifically mentions biomass and geothermal energy as potential resources for meeting this category.
So the biomass industry over the last 10, 20 years has contracted a fair amount. There have been a number of utility 20, 30, 40 megawatt facilities that have shut down. However, very recently under the Biomass program, the new Biomass program, there are 14 small biomass energy facilities in various stages of development. And these will be under 3 up to 5 megawatts when electricity can be used on site. As you can see, they're sprinkled through the foothills to take advantage of forest issues. There's one currently in operation at the Collins Pine Lumber Mill. There's one under construction in the Southern Sierra, and a number that will be starting up as technology arrives and in the next couple of years. Next slide.
Just Placer County Board of Supervisors is currently evaluating the feasibility of a small biomass facility in North Lake Tahoe. And some of the benefits of this facility include increasing waste diversion requirements under SB 1383, providing additional regional energy capacity, having grants cover some of the capital costs, reducing transportation costs to remove forest waste, and also a local representative from Sierra Club commented about this facility stating, "We recognize that there's a problem in the Sierra Nevada. We're dealing with 100 years of fire suppression and that material needs to come out." And lastly, I just want to finish up, thank you again for your time on this topic. If you have questions, now's the time that you can either raise your hand or put questions in the question box. And our contact information is on the slide if anyone needs to contact us. Thank you.